Good morning. I'm going to give you guys a second to get in here since it's a live stream. If you are watching the recording, you can just fast forward a little bit. But it's raining outside today, so I'm like really super overexposed because the lighting is weird. Let me see if I can actually turn it off and see if it helps at all. Oh, yeah, it helps a little bit. Okay, as always, you're gonna hear baby in the background because it's real life and we celebrate real life over here. This week is gonna be quick. I actually have some stuff that I've gotta do. Good morning, Esther. I love the name Esther. I have some stuff I gotta do today. I actually woke up late, like an hour ago, which is so not me. The baby was up all night last night and he was up around like 5:30 this morning and he was wide awake and then he fell back asleep and I fell back asleep with him when I'm normally up by 5:30 and he didn't wake up till 8:30, so here I am waking up with him and I have a lot of stuff to accomplish today, which is fine. There's not a lot in Leviticus so far anyhow, this is week 6. Thank you, Esther. This is week 6 of our Bible study. If you have not already joined us for the Bible in a Year Challenge, you can visit my blog, thefuelhomestead.com, and just search Bible in a Year, or it's in one of the recent blog posts. You can join us. If you are a woman, you can join our Homestead Homemaking group for Christian women and friends. You don't have to be a Christian to join, but you do have to be a woman. And we have further discussion in there. And if you're not a woman, and even if you are, you don't have Facebook or whatever, you can join us in the discussion of this video below. So we're going to get started. This is week 6. We are leaving Exodus and we are going into Leviticus chapter 1 through 25. Exodus was hard for most of us. I think it was kind of boring. Sorry, God. But it just was. But it's a necessary. Leviticus is very necessary too. So these books are known as the books of law. So this is where God lays out his law to his people, and thank the Lord that Jesus came to fulfill the law, right? Because there are a lot of rules and regulations that you had to go by back then. And back then, with our culture and society, it made complete and total sense. We may not understand it fully here in modern society, but they understood it fully then. So in the beginning of Leviticus, we go through the different offerings. God lays out the burnt offering, how that's supposed to play out, the grain offering, the fellowship offering, the sin offering. There's a lot of different offerings, and there's a lot of different ways that you have to do each one, and you have to be very specific. Anybody think the Israelites were really good at taking instruction? Like, how did you remember all of this? You know what I mean? Which is why it was written down. But, so I'm going to start in Leviticus chapter 4, and as I'm reading through the Leviticus, I get to chapter 4, verse 13, and it says, the whole Israelite community sins unintentionally and does what is forbidden in any of the Lord's commands, even though the community is unaware of the matter when they realize their guilt and the sin they committed becomes known. The assembly must bring a young bull as a sin offering and present it to the tent of meeting. The elders of the community are to lay their hands on the bull's head. And it goes blah, blah, blah. It goes all through it, right? I wrote, end quote, thank God we have the ultimate offering and sacrifice now, Jesus. When you read through the books of the law, you really come to appreciate what God did to send his only son as the ultimate sacrifice. I mean, that is really mostly what I got from Leviticus. Reading through the law is really interesting, and it's really important because there are people that still go by the old law. But it also shows you just how complicated it was without Jesus, without a savior. We fail God every single day. I'm going to skip to chapter 9. And I have a note here. Okay, so let me see. I'm going to start with verse 23, I think. Moses and Aaron then went into the tent of meeting. Then they came out. They blessed the people, and the glory of God, the glory of the Lord appeared to all the people. Fire came out from the presence of the Lord and consumed the burnt offering and the fat portions on the altar. And when all the people saw it, they shouted for joy and fell face down. So my mind works a little bit differently than most people's. But I saw that the people saw that the fire came out of the presence of the Lord. And when I read that, it was like a creeping fire that just came out and consumed the burnt offering and the fat portions. Well, if you remember further before this, with mystics, with mysticism, there were a lot of magicians, and there were a lot of people who worshipped false gods. Even the Israelites created a false god because it made them feel safe. They thought that the god was going to protect them. I wrote on the side note, I said, could it be, oh, you gotta be kidding me, that, I'll get that in a second. Could it be that the Lord, don't answer that, Junior, that the Lord created offerings like this and presented himself in a way like this because they were similar to false god offerings, except he proved himself real? So could it be that God went through all of these rules and regulations because in almost every single one, God shows himself? And could it be that he went through that with all of these offerings to prove himself real, minus the other God? All these laws were given to them so they would realize how imperfect they were and how imperfect we are and how much we need Jesus. Yeah, true. Yeah. So I thought that was really interesting. Just a thought that I had. Always love the purification after childbirth one when you're a woman. That's an interesting read in chapter 12. Going to chapter 13. We're going through the regulations about defiling skin diseases, which was interesting, especially when you're an herbalist or into medicine. And I wrote, were the laws of clean and unclean really a way for God to keep the Israelites healthy? So if you were to go through, you see there's a lot of laws about clean and unclean animals to eat, clean and unclean ways to deal with skin infections, boils, and rashes. Could it be that God put laws into place really just to keep them healthier? I thought that was an interesting thought. Talks about mold. When we go through chapter 14, cleansing from defiling skin diseases, see, the nice thing about reading the Bible is you're not just getting stuff, about God and about life, but you're kind of getting stuff about, like how to live life healthily. Because in chapter 14, it talks about, it says, the priest shall order that 2 live clean birds and some cedar wood, scarlet yarn, and hyssop be brought for the person to be cleansed from the skin diseases. So I thought that was really interesting. I wanted to dive into that more and kind of study that more to see if there's any actual true medicinal value. And I know there is, at least with cedar wood. But we see that a lot in these laws. And when you first read it, you're like, oh, what a weird law. But then you're like, wait, could it be that God knows what he's doing? Because in Genesis, he told us all plants were used for food and medicine. So I thought that was really interesting. Get to chapter 18. And verse 24, and I thought this was really interesting. And beside it, the only thing I wrote was America. Okay, if you're not in America, you probably still understand when I'm about to read this, and you will take it as you will. But I feel like America is in this part right here. Chapter 18, verse 24, I'm going to read it all. It says, do not defile yourselves in any of these ways, because this is how the nations that I am going to drive out before you became defiled. Even the land was defiled, so I punished it for its sin, and the land vomited out its inhabitants. But you must keep my decrees and my law. The native born and the foreigners residing among you must not do any of these detestable things. Detestable things are the things that he listed before that. Do not approach a woman to have sexual relations with her. Do not have sexual relations with your neighbor's wife. Do not give any of your children to be sacrificed to Molech, which was an interesting concept too. Do not have sexual relations with a man as one does with a woman. Do not have sexual relations with an animal. He goes through this list of things. Verse 27, for all these things were done by the people who lived in the land before you, and the land became defiled. Okay. Verse 29, everyone who does any of these detestable things, such persons must be cut off from their people. Keep my requirements, Junior, and do not follow any of the detestable customs that were practiced before you came, and do not defile yourselves with them. Bring him here, please. Something's happening in there. All right. Going to chapter... Goodbye. 19. we're almost done anyhow. Chapter 19, verse 23, it says, "When you enter the land and plant any kind of fruit tree, regard its fruit as forbidden. For 3 years you are to consider it forbidden. It must not be eaten. In the 4th year all its fruit will be holy, an offering of praise to the Lord. But in the 5th year you may eat its fruit. In this way your harvest will be increased." I wanted to research that more, and if anybody knows, if you have orchards, like if there's any significance of that in modern orchards, I thought that was really interesting. Going to chapter 20, it talks again about sacrificing your children to Molech. I actually looked that up, and Molech was a god. Molech was a god who people literally sacrificed their children to. And so he's telling you, don't do that. It's a shame people had to be told not to do that. And then we're just going through sacrifices and festivals and blasphemers. And that's it. That's all I got from Leviticus this week. So it's just hard. Once we get through these chapters of the law, we're still getting stuff in them. But once we get through the chapters of the law, I think it's really going to open up and we're all going to really start seeing more. I would really be interested to see what you guys are getting from reading the books of the law, to see if any of you are getting something different than I am. Because like I said, the Word of God is living, and each one of us might have something pop out to us that another might not. The things that I'm finding is just things I want to research more, like the orchard thing, or the Molech thing that I researched, or the cedar wood for skin and the hyssop for skin, and so it's causing me to look deeper into culture and theology and medicine, and comparing it against modern times. So at least that's an encouragement. But that's it for this week, I think, because that's really all I got out of it. If you go through Leviticus so far, I don't have a lot of notes. But again, it's mostly just because it's the books of the law, and it's more so we know that Jesus came to fulfill the law, and so that's just the biggest blessing, reading the law. So, all right, this week it was a short one because there wasn't much to talk about. But if you have something to talk about and add to the conversation, please comment below or take the discussion to our Facebook group. And we will see you next week. Bye.